Welcome to the 18 October 2021 Annapolis Transportation Board meeting. We appear to have a quorum. Welcome all, and we have some distinguished and very interesting visitors for us today. Out of courtesy to our visitors, if it's all right with everybody else, I will dispense with the first two agenda items, which are really pro forma business items, and move directly to the speakers, who are Eyvind Duland and Eileen Fogarty, who are going to tell us about the proposed developments, and in fact developments at some stage of accomplishment already at City Dock and for the Hillman Garage. So with no further delay, I would like to hand the meeting over to you for a presentation of 15 to 20 minutes, if you can do that. And we are more than interested.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And my name is Eileen Fogarty. I know most of you. I am working for the city to coordinate many aspects of the project. And with me tonight is Eyvind Duland. Eyvind is the project manager for our private sector partner, AMRP, Annapolis Mobility and Resiliency Partnership. So there you go. Next slide, please. We'd like to give you a very brief overview tonight of where we are, what has happened with Hillman Garage, which is tremendous. It's been really moving along, and we're at a point where we'd be interested in all of your comments on the parking and mobility strategy. So this image, many of you have seen last year when the, actually it was 2019, January 14th, 2019, when the City Dock Action Committee recommended approval of the City Dock Resiliency and Reinvestment Project. And this is a rendering, but you get a sense of first what will be a resilient downtown, safe from flooding, a walkable downtown with safe connections, bikeway connections, pedestrian connections, a promenade all around the City Dock from the Naval Academy all the way over to Compromise, and the 1.5 acre public open space park. So this is our City Dock project, and you can see next to 110 Compromise, right underneath, right in the middle of the slide, is also new open space anticipated for the Donner parking lot. Next slide. As all of you are aware, this image was taken during the fall boat show in 2019, when the boat show was flooded. All of downtown was flooded, and the flooding has reached 52 days a year. So with the City Dock project, the city committed finally to address this flooding for once and for all, because it's had a very deleterious and uncertain, not just deleterious, but creates uncertainty for all of our downtown businesses and many of the residents, particularly on Prince George Street. Next slide, please. The other issue, which anyone who has parked in Hillman Garage is well aware of, is the urgent need to replace the dilapidated Hillman Garage, but not just replace it in kind, replace it with a much more efficient and a safer new garage with greater capacity. We're looking at 590 parking spaces. And as Eyvind will describe to you, I think, Eyvind, what do we have now? 440?
425.
425. We have 425 spaces now. There was a lot of discussion about going to 700 spaces, but the decision was fairly straightforward, because given the height limitations and the cost of going below grade, they came out at the optimal sizing, came out at 590. So it's not just the additional spaces. What you'll see is real-time parking with the new garage. Also, there are a whole variety of features in terms of both the solar panels on the roof of the new garage, and Ivan will address all of these, the electric charging stations, the bike stations. So it is going to be a terrific new transportation hub. Next slide, please. So we are in the pre-development phase right now. That started this past January, and it will take until January of 2022. And this is the phase where all of the analysis takes place, as well as the schematic designs. We had extensive financial analysis of the project feasibility study. The city also brought in CBRE, which are globally recognized developers in public-private partnerships and financial experts to review all of this. And the recommendation to the council, and the council concurred, is that this garage is feasible, the entire city dock project is feasible, and to move forward with it. Next slide, please. We have back one. When you look at the garage, you're going to see this, gorgeous garage with a lot of amenities. We had many meetings with the downtown residents, the downtown businesses, also the Historic Preservation Commission, the Planning Commission, as well as the City Council, to hear the concerns and address the issues that people wanted to see addressed in the garage. Next slide, please. First, with the Historic Preservation Commission, we actually had 5, not 4 work sessions with the commission. And on October 12th, the commission approved basically the design for the garage, which was tremendous. There were many meetings and a lot of revisions to get to that point. Next slide, please. And the preceding week, the Planning Commission on October 7th, Planning Commission had 3 work sessions to look at the building mass, scale, and character. And they had several areas they looked at, including the greening of the garage, solar energy opportunities, and they approved the site plan. So Hillman Garage is ready to move forward, both from a financial standpoint, from a site design standpoint, and with the approval of the Historic Preservation Commission to move forward to construction. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Ivan.
Thank you, Eileen, and it's a pleasure to be here today. Give a bit of overview of the 2 projects. We are very fortunate to be selected, and we've had a fantastic working relationship with the city and a very productive sessions and working relationship with the Planning Commission and Historic Preservation Commission to kind of get to where we are today. So what I thought I'd do is give a little bit of a background on kind of the 2 projects, kind of how they're progressing, and then run quickly into talk a little bit about kind of some of the parking and mobility analysis that has been done to date. So as Eileen mentioned, we've moved the city dock concept forward from where it was originally, as it was originally envisioned, from the City Dock Action Committee, from our proposal submission to a conceptual design. This is a conceptual design that now, over the next year or so, year plus, will be refined further. So of the 2 projects, Hillman Garage is kind of running ahead of City Dock. As Eileen mentioned, a key to the City Dock design is this continual promenade along and around Ego Alley from the Naval Academy and then over to Compromise Street. As part of this, there are several kind of key features that are included to create a public space that's inviting and open and very much green. You can see one of the refinements that we've done is the conversion of 110 or the Donner parking lot into a park, and we've been able to do that based on the increased car count in the new Hillman garage. The other thing that's worth noting, just quickly on the city dock concept, is what we're looking to do is kind of integrate resiliency infrastructure within the public space in as unobtrusive of a manner as possible. So you'll see here just a snapshot of how we're looking to achieve this. One is the raising of the walkway up to 5 feet. So that's about equivalent with the pier all the way at the inner portion of, or the bulkhead at the inner portion of Ego Alley. So the new concrete pier that was made in around 2015, 2016. So we're raising the promenade up to that height as kind of the base height. That will provide most of the protection required over the next 10, 15 plus years or so. And then beyond that, we're then integrating a flood wall of up to about 8 feet or so, which will take on different forms and as we move around the city dock area, be it an integrated actual concrete wall, as you can see here, which is a part of the park design and has a function as a seat wall for the park, and not just a kind of standalone flood wall to some pop-up or flip up or pop-up flood walls and floodgates. So what we're trying to do is layer in different type of protection systems that form part of a whole to make the space as open, as inviting as possible, and keep the connection with the water, but have that increased resiliency infrastructure built within it. So this is a concept that will be further defined as we refined as we moved forward here over the next year or so. But did want to touch on that briefly because it tends to be a little bit more interesting for a lot of folks to look at rather than just a parking garage, which doesn't have the same necessarily design flair, though. I believe the architects have done an amazing job here on Hillman. So if we look at what we've been doing with Hillman Garage, we have spent a good deal of time early in the year to about mid-year evaluating different design options, different or what the actual user need is within Annapolis. How many users are there? How can they best be accommodated? As well as how we can work and fit a garage from a just 3D dimensions within the restrictions that are placed on the site when it comes to the historic height district limits. So where we've landed, as Eileen mentioned, is a parking garage that has about 590 spaces over 5 levels, including an open air top level. So that is 1 level more than the existing garage. The spaces that would be removed, and I'll get to the numbers here shortly, from City Dock as City Dock transitions from kind of a parking lot to a more public space and park, will be accommodated here. So there's a net increase in parking spaces in the area. vehicle entrance and exit points remain the same, so Gorman Street and Duke of Gloucester. What we're going towards is a gateless access system. So instead of pulling into the garage, rolling down your window, hitting a button to get a ticket, gate opening up, and then kind of repeating the process in reverse when exiting, it will be a gateless system where you drive into the garage and you pay when you park with there will be an option to pay with credit card there, but it will be app-based payment is what we believe most people will use, and where you include your license plate number when you park, and that license plate number is then checked against entry and exit times. What this is one thing that it is in some ways a small change, but an important change when it also comes to just traffic flow and ease of use of coming in and out. I'm sure a lot of people have stood behind somebody else as they're waiting to try the credit card on the third or fourth try, trying to get out, which can cause some backup, particularly around kind of larger events such as the boat show, which is closing out today. The other thing that we've are very happy that we've been able to achieve is the incorporation of solar panels on the roof. There are a fair amount of EV charging stations that will be included within the garage as the garage is constructed, but we've also included we've also made ready for expansion of the number of EV charging spaces so that it's all conduit is already put in place to cover close to 20% of all spaces in the future as the transition to more and more EV cars takes place. We've also included several bike rack locations within the garage and maintain the walkways around the garage itself, which we're very happy with. So this is just an overview of the site. Due to the amount of time that we spend, we've been able to optimize the floor plan so the garage is narrower north to south than the existing garage, which has enabled us to include a sidewalk on the Gorman side street next to the garage, which will help with both pedestrian and bike access in and around the garage itself. As you can see here, we have tried to break up the facade in different components with different materials to minimize the felt size of the garage. And we have tried to incorporate PV panels as an integrated feature of the garage, which will almost feel like a pergola of some sort, and provide a little bit of shielding for the cars that are parked on the top floor. We're able to do, based on the layout and placement of the ramp, we're going to be able to flatten the entry point from Duke of Gloucester Street. So instead of driving down the steep valley that's currently there, which is cause for some concern and makes the entry and exit less than ideal, we'll be able to have more open and both pedestrian and vehicle friendly entry point and exit point from Duke of Gloucester. The reactivation of Gorman Street into a streetscape that both has more greenery included, but also softened so that it can be used by both hard and soft pedestrians alike, and which we're also going to be encouraging by placement of bike racks at different locations within the garage itself. We think will help kind of anchor Hillman as kind of a mobility hub within within the city of Annapolis, particularly with the proximity to local local shops and restaurants, but also with the amount of traffic and that is in and around the city hall and the various departments. You can also see here we have the first floor is, or the ground floor of the garage is open, which will hopefully encourage some reuse, adaptive reuse capabilities of using the space for potential pop-up markets and things like that in the future. It's almost become a running joke at this point in time, the amount of string lights that we've tried to incorporate, all in hopes of kind of softening the feel of the garage and making the area feel more welcoming and more a part of the streetscape within Annapolis than an alley, which it can tend to feel like today, particularly at nights. So that was a whistle-stop tour of the through the garage design. Cognizant of time, I did want to provide a little bit of background on parking and mobility. If there is some time to do that, but Kurt, I'll let you guide us on time.
Yeah, please. That sounds like core to our interests.
As I mentioned in the beginning, one of the things that we spent a fair amount of time looking at in the early stages of the year was the city's parking assets and parking and travel patterns within the city and across kind of the city's parking assets and utilization rates. Both and I should highlight both of that, the on-street spaces, so metered spaces that the city owns, as well as off-street, be it garages or lots. Overall, the kind of the takeaway is there is not a massive shortage of parking for the city as a whole. However, there is definitely differences between different portions of the city, and there's also differences between on-street paid parking and what is happening in certain residential areas as well. So you have, from kind of a macro perspective, enough capacity within the city to absorb the demand, but that capacity isn't kind of spread or isn't the perfect match necessarily when you look at more kind of detailed portions of the city map. We took this information as kind of part of the parking and initial parking and revenue study, which we did to look at how the garage will function from a financial perspective and where is the optimal sizing of the garage. We took also a look at kind of how does the current setup look like for the city dock area, so Hillman and adjacent now, and how does it look like in the future when the Hillman is redeveloped and the city dock is redeveloped. As you can see from the graph in front of you, we are roughly adding about 40 to 50 additional spaces in the area as a whole, but we're moving more spaces from on-street or on lots into the garage. And all of this is just looking purely at what is lot parking and garage parking. So there's no changes on street metered parking. So along Main Street, for example, that remains unchanged. The other aspect that we were looking at is, okay, when we're undertaking this project and undertaking Hillman, how does that affect the area? I know there's been a lot of concern, quite understandably, of kind of the disruption that will happen when Hillman comes down. The good thing from our analysis is that there is capacity within the different assets or different garage or off-street parking assets within a mile or so. That's not always the case, and then you really have a problem. But here it's more there. We have the benefit of there being excess capacity. So the question is, how do we most effectively utilize that capacity during the time period where Hillman Garage is down? One of the ways or that we're planning on doing this is implementing a interim mobility service, which will utilize a combination of fixed schedule and on demand to enable the use of those that existing capacity, as well as hopefully reduce some trips, so make some trip avoidance. The combination or how we're planning on doing that is to have a fixed schedule for a mobility service that would go to some of the garages with existing capacity or excess capacity, and run fixed routes during the kind of commuting hours in the morning and afternoon. So it would function as a supplement to the current circulator service. When we're not in kind of the normal commuting hours, those vehicles will be available and run on an on-demand type method. So what's commonly the equivalent of an Uber or Lyft type setup, where users can book a ride within a service within the service area, which is now being defined.
So you're speaking of demand by individuals rather than net
correct.
Demand by groups as it varies.
Correct.
Right.
Yep. And we're hoping that the on-demand portion will help alleviate some of the pressure from local trips that we've seen in the data from going fairly short distances and utilizing the garage or downtown lots, because there will be increased pressure on the downtown lots and on-street parking. And it will also enable the city to evaluate this type of solution and how it fits within the broader transportation and transit policies. If it can function as a supplement to the existing transit service and help as the always tricky kind of first and last mile travel solution. There are a couple of other items that I think are just quickly worth highlighting. One is in this interim period, we're going to have a focus on kind of different tools to address different needs and different concerns. The first is on the short term, more short term. It is going to be simple but important things such as removing street signs, updating third-party databases so that nobody is pulling up to to visit a Hillman garage, which is no longer open for business during this interim construction period. And that includes kind of updating city websites and other information. And this is very important for the group of users that are visiting Annapolis occasionally. So the transient user, which is are doing day trips or occasional trips to Annapolis, which would kind of open an app, a navigation app, or their car when driving there to find the closest in parking spot. The second is the rollout of the intramobility solution, and integrate that with third-party databases so that is a service that the public is aware of, that they can take advantage of. This will be likely more for the kind of two primary user groups: a more frequent visitor to the area, as well as those coming for special events and things of that nature, where additional information around the mobility solution would be needed and would be helpful. And then long term, what we're looking to do is integrate wayfinding throughout the city with and signage to Hillman Garage and signage around the city dock and downtown area. I think one thing that has been pretty consistent feedback is that the garage and some of the parking can be hard to find currently, which contributes to a lot of circling around to find parking spots and kind of indirect contributor to traffic. And then lastly, but far from least, it is going to be very important as we move in here into the construction period, starting early next year, to increase the amount of enforcement around the residential parking areas to both to alleviate pressure on those spots, as well as contribute to kind of parking liquidity within the area. So we want to encourage kind of turnover of parking spaces to make the system as a whole function as efficiently and as effectively as possible. So there's going to be a fair amount of focus on mobility on parking enforcement, as well as mobility in this interim period, to enable kind of the best utilization as possible of the city's existing parking assets. So that was a very quick rundown. It did take a little bit longer than 20 minutes, but we might have, believe it or not, set a record for how quickly Eileen and I have managed to go through this.
Thank you so much, Eileen and Ivan. I'm sure we all have questions, and if I can, I'd like to start with some of my own. First of all, it would be nice if you could send these graphical presentations to me to share with the board. If you can do that, I'd really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And another thing that I had to, as I understand it, there will be a significant net increase in parking spaces, which is good, as well as greening and water protection. Some small things. I hope that you will consult with some of the bicycle groups about the type of bicycle racks that are installed. For example, the ones in the garage right now are essentially unusable. There are modern ones that work. So that should be updated. The solar implementation on the roof looks to be a small fraction of the total roof area. And I wonder what the chances are of maybe enlarging that to cover. It looks like nearly 40 to 50% of the roof area is not covered, and there are benefits, not only energy, but also shading for the cars. Is there any possibility that might be increased?
That that is something that we would like to do. However, we've pushed it. I think as far as the HBC will allow us at this point. So it is both from the city and ourselves as well as the Planning Commission. There are definitely some benefits of expanding the solar array further, but in order to keep the view sheds within the requirements of the HBC, we are somewhat limited to go beyond what we've done now.
And it's hard to find 17th century solar panels.
That was pointed out to us.
Yes.
The HPC looked at, had them do mock-ups of views from all kinds of directions, and the Planning Commission shared your same interest, but in terms of addressing the HPC view shed criteria, that is what drove the size.
Okay, great. On free parking, the employee spaces, I was glad to hear you evaluate that at approximately 100 employee spaces. And there are lots of things that can be done constructively to eliminate the impact or reduce the impact that city employees themselves have on overall parking availability. The present situation, as I understand it, is that city employees have free parking. Other forms of transportation to the city are not free, which seems a little upside down. One of the options I gather you have considered is moving them to more remote locations, still providing free parking. The federal government has a policy that I think is actually better in the sense that well, I shouldn't say the federal government. A number of institutions have provided transportation subsidies in dollars, leaving it to the employee to choose the mode of transportation that he or she wants to use. And the net result of that is that demand for parking goes down as people find alternative transportation modes. So that's something that I would hope that you would consider and perhaps recommend to the city. And then finally, a politically explosive factor in all of this is free parking to city residents. That is certainly something that drives overall demand. And again, right now we are charging low-income people who tend to use buses for that service and providing free service to people who own automobiles or relatively high-income people. Again, it seems a little backwards. That's all I had to say. Are there other? Well, do you have any remarks on any of those points, and then we'll go to the rest of the board.
When I think from our perspective, there or the projects as such between Hillman and City Dock very much linked to that are items or are issues that are closer to city kind of policy that go a little bit beyond kind of the scope of our role and remit here on the project, but we have, as part of our analysis, looked at what the demand for parking is and how to best utilize what is in fact kind of city resources.
I understand that you're constrained by sort of present policy as communicated to you. We are not so constrained and will probably be making recommendations. Did you have anything else on that?
No, nothing more.
Okay. Other members of the board?
Yes,
Yes, Beth?
Yes, on the business of the increased patrolling of the neighborhoods, I live right downtown and I live close enough to the city that I live right near St. Mary's. So we get a lot of parking that, people parking here. And so what I was wondering is, right now, we get very little enforcement because we don't we don't have the same issues that, say, King George, Prince George, and some of these other streets have. So we don't get that much enforcement. They always come if you call. That's not an issue. But what I'm wondering is, because of needing more personnel to be able to do much heavier enforcement, is that what is going to happen? Is SP Plus going to put on more people so that they can enforce better, or heavier, or however you want to say it, through this period of time in the
Well,
neighborhoods?
Beth, I can tell you a recommendation to the city has been to very much increase the enforcement. There's also a discussion about metered parking, which of course would not impact the residents. They would not have to pay for metered parking, but during this interim time, it would require that other people who go into the neighborhood have to pay for parking as a disincentive. So the combination of the metered parking while the garage is down and high levels of enforcement have both been recommended. Ivan, you want to expand on that?
Recommended. How did the city respond?
Well, the city is, the enforcement, I think there's clear agreement that the enforcement has to be increased. And the city is in the process right now of looking at the details of all of the other recommendations, including the recommendations for the metered parking while the garage is down.
Yeah, and a lot of this is just on the basis of if you just think about available parking spaces as a collective or a city resource. With Hillman going offline during construction, the pressure on those spaces becomes naturally larger. So to keep to get the most utility out of those spaces, increased enforcement will be needed to ensure that the kind of what we keep on referring to as kind of parking liquidity of the turnover of the spaces is as kind of high as it can be from a market perspective, because that will help alleviate a lot of issues for both local residents and businesses with kind of avoiding as much kind of circling for parking and stuff like that. So you want to free up parking spaces and ensure that they get utilized as efficiently as possible.
Thanks, John. You have your hand up.
Thanks, Kurt. And by the way, I want to say thank you very much, Ivan. And she went away. Oh, there she is, Eileen. Everybody, it's like the Brady Bunch. Y'all are moving around all the time. I have a lot of questions, and I'm going to try and gloss over some of them that I may put in an email later. They're kind of detailed. My first reaction is I think we need to spend some time integrating your concepts with the way the city really functions. And there are two places that came up in my mind. One is you're talking about another service in addition to the circulator. I think what we need to be talking about is an expanded circulator service. Let's not create a competing system. Let's augment the system we have that goes to all the garages and fits both needs. So that's comment number one. Comment number two, same sort of comment. We need to make sure that the app that's used to do the parking check-in is the same app that does the street check-in. And if we're going to do this business of encouraging people to park in the other garages, we've really got to focus on taking this app and making it universal across all garages. You should be able to go anywhere in the city of Annapolis and use that app to get a street parking, a Hillman garage space, a Gott garage space, a Park Place space, all the way down the line. So I think that suggests right now it's Park Mobile. And I kind of think that's what you have in mind. And I think you were being very circumspect not to use the company name, but I don't have to abide by that rule. So I'm telling you right now, it should be the same service, whatever we were using. I've always been interested in truck loading. Is there any relief for the enormous number of trucks that are blocking our streets. I don't know if you've looked at Conduit Street on any given business day.
This
It is-
this has come up in conversation.
So what
yeah.
was the city's planning? What was your response to, we're going to put a lot of beautiful construction in for the automobiles, and Conduit streets continue to be, I mean, I went out there with a tape measure today and there was 7 feet of passable lane space between 2 of the trucks.
So John, the city, under the city manager, there are people from Public Works and all of the agencies looking at the issue of where people should load, when they should load, exactly that issue. And they are putting together a strategy which will be forthcoming, within the next few weeks.
Okay, so that's something I should take up with the city manager, is what you're saying.
Yes, it's moving, I think, in a very positive direction because they're trying to address the same issue you've just raised, that you can't have trucks everywhere all the time.
It'll be impossible for you to do the construction project in the current way Conduit Street's being used.
Yeah, and that's exactly what their objective is, to address your concern.
What's your current break ground date for the Hillman Garage?
The current schedule that we're looking at is and planning towards is the demolition starting in end of January
Of 22.
Yes.
Okay. And that means you're in pre-development now. So you've got to have completed development before the January 22 start of demolition, correct?
So we're fairly far along when it comes to the design of the garage, and we will be over the coming couple of weeks providing more and more information around kind of the interim mobility service, et cetera. So we're
and how long is the
well.
construction anticipated?
Roughly 15 months of construction.
Thank you. And I take it it's an all or nothing thing. It's not like part of the garage can be used for the first 6 months and part of the finished, it's just off and then it'll come back on, right? Okay, got it. That's helpful to know. I'm a little, and I may need to put this in an email because this gets mathematical, but I still feel like we're playing a bit of a numbers game with parking spaces downtown. I heard you say that we had a 38%, I did the math to get the 38% increase in the number of spaces in the Hillman Garage. But if you look at what we lost at the city where the Campbell Park is now and the Donner parking lot, and one thing that's not on your chart, we're going to lose that space on Market Street. What's the space that the guys want to keep there by the Market House?
That's Market Square.
Market Square. So they want to keep that space and keep that without cars. So we've lost that too. We're winding up with, by my calculation, around a 5% increase in total parking when your project is done. Is that about right?
We have not factored in any permanent loss of.
So I'll put an email together and I'll put that math together. Let's have a discussion about that and not tie up everybody today. But I just, and I'm not saying you're manipulating it here, but these numbers are really important. And then of course, if we pull the Hillman out in the middle, you're trying to solve a big problem, and I can see the way you're doing it. I think you guys are doing a great job. That's everything.
Thanks, John. Wonderful, wonderful questions and observations. Zoe, your hand is up.
Well, I wanted to thank Eileen and Ivan as well. I need to follow up with both of you a little bit more on the city dock resiliency plans as those are moving forward, and as we work towards those and in coordination with the Naval Academy. But I just had a couple of everyone's comments and questions have been very good and enlightened me a bit on this. I had a question about demolition. We focused a lot on construction and the mobility. Demolition of the existing garage and the amount of trucks and is going to be probably shorter than the 14 to 15 month timeframe, but just the truck routes, the damage to existing roadways, the pathway of those trucks and how many you're sort of anticipating, and if there's anything that can be done to sort of alleviate any either damage or just disruption of traffic. We're having my neighborhood is getting paved this week, and I've noticed there's a lot of idling trucks. There's a lot of machinery that's staged and is taking up much more areas than the actual construction site. So that was one of my questions. And the second was, in terms of other areas in the city that may be impacted during construction, with construction laydown areas, where are you bringing in, the steel and storing it, and how is it all the transport happening off-site to support either the demolition or the construction?
Yeah, no, those are good questions, and so the group that Eileen mentioned that we're looking at loading zones and is also looking at coordinating the different construction projects that will be ongoing here over a period of a couple of years, both with Hillman and City Dock, and there's some other projects up by the state legislature, et cetera. So several, when it comes to routes for all of those projects, they will have to be coordinated. For Hillman specifically, we have made a logistics plan for the project that we will now take and adapt as needed to fit within the travel routes and logistics plan that the city is making for kind of the wider area. Some of this will be coordinating delivery times and with both the local businesses. So when they're receiving deliveries that today use kind of Gorman or Conduit, as well as the school pickup and drop off time. So there will be windows that we know will be unavailable to us, and we need to fit around.
Can the wee hours of the morning be used for that rebel transport?
It can. There's always a balance between one's person wee hour is another person's wee hour, and tends to cause some issues as well. So that's what we're now coordinating with the city and the other projects as well. But I think one thing that we should note is the new garage will be cast in place, and we chose that construction method to avoid a lot of the heavy traffic with large equipment that is required to kind of move precast elements and things of that nature. When it comes to the demolition itself, we're planning on effectively taking down the existing garage in pieces. So literally breaking it apart with concrete pulverizers and reusing a fair amount of the material on site. So we have tried to limit the impacts of logistics and the impact of construction as much as possible. It's not going to be completely painless. No construction ever is, but we are trying to minimize as much as the disruption as we possibly can.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Well, this has been an excellent presentation, wonderful discussion. Thank you, Zoe, for reaching out and getting our speakers to join us, and we really appreciate it.
Tom has a question.
Oh,
He's got his hand up.
Tom, go for it.
He's muted. Whoops. You're muted.
There we go. So could you speak to the number of spaces to tie up in the proposed plan in Eagle Alley versus like the number of spaces to tie up a boat in current state?
Sorry, how many, if there's any impact to the number of boats or dock spaces?
Yes.
Yep. There will be no change. We're trying to avoid impacting the number of dock spaces. The caveat to that is we're trying to make the inner portion of Ego Alley and the commonly noted as the dinghy dock to make that more available and accessible, ADA compliant. So there will be some changes there, but we're just too far or too early on the process for me to be able to say precisely how many, if any, dock spaces would be impacted.
Very interesting. Okay. Thank you. If that concludes the discussion, we'll thank you again for coming and move
Can I
on to
ask one more question?
Yes,
Kurt,
Eileen,
if I may?
please.
Tom's question just reminded me something, that there are quite a few transportation and mobility issues associated with the city dock redevelopment and design and concept, and you touched on those shortly, and then we focused most of the presentation discussion on the parking garage. Would it be possible for you to come back as that project
Absolutely.
furthers in terms of concept?
Yep.
You know, I think, Prince George Street, that portion there, that tight turn where the buses are going to be dropping off, there are a lot of other, transportation issues I think we might be interested in. So if you're more than, if you're happy to come back, we would love that.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. So let's formally call the meeting to order. Again, thanks again, speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll call the meeting to order with a roll call. And this brings me to a sticky subject that I have communicated with you. Our secretaries seem to be vaporous in a sense, and I'd like to just have a brief discussion on how we can take care of this matter of producing minutes for each meeting. I've done them for the past 3 meetings, and I'd like to just throw the floor open for discussion and for volunteers who might be motivated to help us do something about that.
Kurt, I'm
Yeah.
happy to be your minutes person for this meeting. I'm not going to commit to a full secretary, but if no one's volunteered for tonight, I'm happy to be your notes taker.
That's terrific. That's great. Thank you, Carol. Is that actually a good concept? Would you all be in favor of just rotating this responsibility so that nobody has to carry the full burden and we spread the pain?
Sure.
I think it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a practical solution and one that is not too painful. And unless somebody strenuously objects, I will just rotate the thing and let people know when their time is up. Thanks so much. And so this month's meeting is taken care of. All right, Kara, you have a roll call, I guess, from the screen. And I don't know if other people are going to be joining us, but that's what it is for the moment. The agenda we are in, does anyone have any alterations they would like to make to the agenda? If not, we will proceed. The draft minutes were prepared by me and distributed. Is there any discussion on those minutes, changes that you would like to make? And then we'll get to adopting them. Nothing? Motion to accept the minutes?
So
May I
moved.
make a motion to, well, Beth beat me to it.
Okay. And the second with John?
Can
And
I
then-
clarify with my second that we're voting to approve both the agenda and the minutes in one motion?
That's fine.
Beth,
Good.
are you okay with that?
Sure,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks so much. I think I saw everybody. Now there is no public participation. We do have a conduit for public participation. On the city website is a way for people to submit comments, questions, input to all of the boards and commissions. Thus far, we have received nothing. And so, again, we skip over that portion of the agenda. Reports from committees and their members. The first one listed is Fare Free Transit, and there has been some activity. We've all done something. John has made terrific progress on the financial component of this, and we've met several times. I'd like to ask John Purnell to give the status of things from his point of view.
I think the correct answer is coming together. I mean, it's still in a state of assembly. We have a schedule, right or wrong, and I needed that Hillman garage information to address that schedule. That's important. We have a PowerPoint that we've developed that's essentially the skeletal PowerPoint we will use to brief the Transportation Committee, the mayor, the city manager, Arundel counties, state and federal resources. All will need to see this. So we're going to need some sort of solid, just like they did for us, some sort of solid, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it. That, of course, will be vetted through this committee first before it goes anywhere else. We are I'm working with Kwaku on ridership, and we're also, Beth is doing benchmarking. So that's kind of my 30,000-foot summary for you, Kurt, if I missed anything.
Wonderful. No, that's great. A couple of remarks from my point of view. In parallel with your work, John, on the PowerPoint presentation, I have started to develop a longer white paper on the subject, which will be a narrative discussion with much more data and much more detail, I guess, than we can digest into a PowerPoint. And at some point, we will have to synchronize those two instruments.
Did you get the agenda, the PowerPoint briefing I sent today?
I did.
Okay,
thanks.
good.
And the other thing, one of the items that you assembled was a nice article that was written, I think, for the Boston Globe by Michelle Wu on fare free transit in the city of Boston. For your information, she is the leading candidate to become the next mayor of the city of Boston. So she will have some clout to make it happen in that city. In that city, the fare component is larger than it is for Annapolis, about 20% or so. So in a sense, she will have a heavier load. The city council right now is considering for Boston proposals to increase the fare. And so she's going to try to swim against that tide and not only not increase the fare, but abolish it altogether. I wish her well. And that's all I had to say on that. Beth?
Yes.
How are your cities?
Well, I've contacted every one of them. And of course, I'm waiting for responses. I did talk to two today, and I communicated with a third who sent me, the third one sent me all this information. I haven't looked at it. I just looked to see if I got it, and I did. But I talked to Corvallis, Oregon today, and I talked to Hanover, New Hampshire. And it's very interesting. I probably got some of the best information from Corvallis, Oregon, but and a lot of things to think about. And so I'll be writing all that up and send it to you two guys so you can look at it. But they did not have any problems going to fare free because they considered it a sustainable type of operation, how to get rid of the greenhouse gases, how to get rid of things that kind of thing for climate change and all that. And so that's how, and their city council, they didn't even have a referendum in the city. They just did it. And they've had it about 10 years now. Hanover, New Hampshire has never had paid transit.
Interesting.
The city manager I spoke to has been there 25 years. She said it's always been unpaid, and she thinks that it probably started about 30 years ago and was always unpaid. So it's interesting what I'm learning, and one of the things, of course, we can use when they brought up about sustainable and about climate change and about the pollution of, greenhouse gases and all this stuff, is the bay and how important keeping the bay clean and all. So it's also a side that we can use other than the benefits of to various people about using fare free transit. So anyway, so that's it in a nutshell of what I've been doing. So I will be talking to more people tomorrow. They told me they were going to. And
Wonderful.
one of the other things I was told is that a lot of cities in the United States are looking at fare free transit. The man from Oregon said he talks to people all the time about fare free transit. They said, and they consider it part of the job of what they're supposed to be doing. And so who knows?
Yeah.
But he also felt that a large city, Boston, a large city would be far harder to go fare free than a smaller city like Annapolis or like his in Oregon or whatever, because it is just not as complicated to be a small city to be able to do it. So
Yeah.
that was his take.
That's good. Thanks. I don't think I shared in our prior meeting of the board the fact that Anne Arundel County is already fare free. I don't know whether you were aware
We talked
of that.
about it.
I talked about it
Last
last
time.
week,
Yeah, last time.
week in the last meeting of the board, though.
September.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. They did so, perhaps not for the same reasons, but for similar reasons. And there's some chance it will persist even after the COVID thing is over. Anything else on this subject? Let me invite all members of the board, as they have an interest in transit and the fare-free option in particular, to join us. Just indicate your interest in this, any particular expertise, ideas, data that you think are important, and we need all the help we can get.
Now that Kurt's writing a white paper, we desperately need all the help we can get, because he's going to want a lot of detail and facts, and I don't have to make those up.
It's a lot easier to make them up.
It is.
All right. So with that, on to bicycles. Not much has happened since our last meeting, I think. I've had conversations with Senator Elfreth and with our delegate, Dana Jones, and they are primed to have a discussion with us. And I guess it's just, I'm going to try to set up a meeting involving John Corrin and them, and we'll try to get a bill introduced to change that bicycle thing. They're in favor of it, but we don't know how the rest of the legislature is going to react. Anybody else have anything on bicycles? No. Oh, by the way, I entered the Naval Academy on a bicycle on the on an empty sidewalk because the traffic lanes were full, a line of about 20 cars or so, and they were stopped at the entrance gate. So I went along an empty sidewalk, and the guard came out and instructed me that I was violating state law and would have to get off the sidewalk. So they're not aware of the change that has occurred. I don't know whether you want to take that on, Zoe, but
Well,
they
it
may
is
have
a
internal
federal-
policies, but
We don't follow state law. We follow federal law. So even though it's a city of Annapolis law, state law, we do have a special instruction on bicycles on the
really,
installation.
what is it?
No riding on sidewalks.
Is there a formal? Can you find that instruction and can you send it to me? I'd like to see what it says.
Yeah, I think I'll have to hunt it down. But
is it an OPNAV instruction, or is it a federal instruction? What is it?
No, it would be particular to our installation, but it defines where bicycles are allowed. You cannot ride bicycles in ceremonial areas near the chapel. For folks who exercise on the
Right.
installation, we don't allow jogging in that area or exercising in that area. We also, what a lot of people don't know is you're not supposed to wear headphones while running on the installation.
Yeah.
For safety reasons. And there are certain areas where bicycles are allowed and not allowed. But I can track it down.
If there's a formal instruction, I should know what it is.
And
Thanks so much.
And I can tell you that the installation probably is not, we would have to think very carefully whether we would allow bicycles on our sidewalks, just given the tremendous amount of pedestrians and midshipmen using sidewalks.
I understand. Okay. So we're in the area now of unfinished business. We'll go around the table, beginning with Beth.
Nothing more.
Okay, Kara.
Nothing from me. I've been out for a bit, so I'm getting back into the swing of
Yeah,
things.
I'm glad to see you again. And I know you have some knowledge and a special perspective on bus transportation. So I encourage you to share it when we get there. Carol Kelly is no longer with us, I'm sorry to say. Charles Brooks is not here tonight, nor is David DeQuincio, nor is Elvia. So John, you are next.
I have nothing. I've certainly used up plenty of my time tonight. I yield it back to the chair.
And the chair is next on the list, and he yields to Tom Schock.
Anything?
What was that, Tom?
Nothing from me.
All right. Vince Harriman also could not make it. And Zoe, you are
Nothing else
last.
for me.
That seems
But
to wrap it up.
When we do have that meeting with Senator Elfreth and Delegate Jones, we may want to have a conversation about SHA potential funding sources to continue the feasibility study work on Route 450 King George Street.
Yes, your news about the delay in funding was unhappy news. I don't know that they can do anything about that, can they? Or could they?
They potentially could.
All right. All right. Kwaku seems not to be with us tonight. Is that correct?
Vacational last week. He may still be a day of vacation
Good.
today.
All right. Well,
I haven't heard anything from him in 8 days, so I think he's probably still out.
All right. Well, he gets a rest. The last item before adjournment is new business. Would anybody like to raise new subjects? Hearing nothing, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Thanks so much. And again, Zoe, thanks for arranging our speakers. It was a very nice update.
Do we have a speaker idea for next time, for next meeting?
I have nothing. Please think about it and communicate.